Today we're talking about a weird little GM station wagon detail that most people walk right past. These tiny notches in the rear bumper. If you've ever seen one and thought accident damage or random styling, nope. It's actually one of those smart, old-school solutions that GM only used for a short time, then quietly dropped. And once you understand it, you'll start spotting it everywhere in old photos. So here's the question. Before I tell you, take a second and guess. Why would GM cut a small notch into the bumper like that? If your guess is it's a built-in step, you got it. That notch is a step provision. When the tailgate swings open, the notch comes with it, so the bumper becomes a more usable step. You step up, then step into the back. It's simple, mechanical, and very late 60s GM. What's even funnier is GM was proud of it. They didn't hide it, they marketed it. There is a 1969 Chevrolet Wagon brochure where GM actually shows the rear of the wagon on the cover with the tailgate open just to show off that bumper step. That's not normal. Car brochures almost always led with the front of the vehicle because that is where the face is. But GM wanted people to notice this little feature. And that brings us to the next detail that makes it interesting. 1969 wasn't some huge ground-up redesign year for all of GM's wagons. It wasn't like a clean sheet moment where everything changed. That's why this feels like such a strange thing to highlight. It was more like GM quietly said, we can improve this one problem right now, and they did it as a running change. Now here's the key part. You only got this bumper notch if your wagon had the optional third row seat. No third row seat, no notch. Because without that rear-facing seat, there's no real reason to climb into the back like that. If it's just cargo space, you're loading things, not stepping in like a passenger. So today, that notch becomes a quick clue. If you see it, odds are you're looking at a wagon that was ordered to carry people, not just groceries. GM rolled this out across two worlds at once. Full-size wagons got it starting in 1969 and kept it through 1970. Intermediates got it in 1969 too, and they carried it longer through 1972. And then it disappears. Why? Because GM changed the whole idea of how you enter the back of a wagon. In 1971, the full-size clamshell wagons show up. If you know, you know. Those are the ones where the glass slides up into the roof and the lower gate drops down into the body. There's no swinging tailgate anymore, so there's nothing for that notch to travel with. No swing door, no step. But there's another big reason. On those full-size clamshell wagons, the third row faces forward. You do not enter from the rear like before. You climb in from the side doors. So the whole reason for a rear bumper step basically vanishes overnight. On the intermediate wagons, the story ends a little later. They kept that notch through 1972 because that generation still used the older style rear entry idea for the third row. But when the intermediates were redesigned for 1973, they changed the tailgate design too. The lift gate opens differently and the old step setup doesn't really fit the new hardware. Could GM have kept a step anyway? Probably. But now you're getting into cost, complexity, and practicality. A step that rises with a lift gate can get awkward fast. It can look weird. It can hit you if you're not paying attention. And it's one more thing to engineer, stamp, align, and warranty. So GM just moved on. That's why this is such a cool piece of wagon trivia. It's not a famous option package. It's not an engine code. It's not a trim level everyone argues about. It is just a tiny feature that existed for a short time because GM had a specific problem to solve, and they solved it in the most physical way possible. And honestly, it fits the era perfectly. Because those late 60s and early 70s wagons were not small cars pretending to be practical. They were big machines, real frames, heavy glass, long bodies, big V8s. Wagons back then were basically family trucks with carpet. And that's why people still love them, especially the full-size cars right before the clamshell era and the clamshell wagons themselves. They were loaded, they were comfortable, and they had that last great American wagon vibe. Then the late 70s happens. Downsizing changes everything. Big engines start disappearing from wagons. By the 1980s, the power just isn't the same. You can drive them, sure, but if you've ever felt the torque of the big block era, you understand why people say the magic was gone. And if you want one wagon that sums up the whole GM went wild and didn't apologize era, it's hard not to mention the 1970 Pontiac Safari. That nose, that chrome, that over-the-top front end. It's almost too much. but it's also exactly why it's memorable. And under the hood, it could be the kind of V8 that made a full-size wagon feel effortless. So yeah, a tiny notch in a bumper sounds like nothing, but it's actually a small window into how GM thought about family cars at their peak. Practical, a little clever, and built like they expected people to actually use them. Now, I want to hear your take. Was that bumper step worth the retooling for such a short run? Or was it one of those ideas that sounded better in the brochure than it felt in real life?